as always on Biz Today, we get a successful entrepreneur in the studio. It's always my privilege to find these people who have great stories to share. Because you know what it's like being a startup entrepreneur. There's so many challenges. There are days when you want to quit, give up, find a job. Hell, why should we even build this? But then there are people who've built these businesses over the years with a lot of blood, sweat and tears. And we get them in here so that they can share their stories and inspire you. One such person is Alice Leah. Alice has been the owner and editor of Mum's Mail magazine since 2004. A former KZN Women in Business chairperson, she qualified and worked as an English teacher for 5 years, then moved on to advertising sales at what you know as the independent newspapers for a further 5 years, and then discovered and bought Mum's Mail. Although passionate about her business, Alice realizes something has to give when it comes to long hours at her desk, and it's usually time with the family that suffers. So it's something that has spurred or inspired her to be able to do that and to obviously build a better business. She's also a current member of Women in Business, Pietermaritzburg, and other organizations, which she will talk to us about. Welcome to Biz Today, Alice.
Thank you for having me.
It's lovely to get you in the studio. You're a very prominent person on the Durban business scene. I have heard and seen you for a number of years and finally get to meet you today.
And it's lovely to meet you too.
So thanks for coming into studio to share your story today.
Thanks for the invite.
Who is Alice Leah? Let's start with that.
Sure, how much time do you have?
Let's see, let's look at the clock.
Just a background, as you know, I'm actually from the Vaal, so I'm a Verenigen girl. I don't often tell people that. But grew up in the Vaal Triangle, then moved to Durban towards the end of the 90s with my husband, who was in IT at the time. Studied as an English teacher, hated being an English teacher, did that for 5 years and couldn't escape fast enough. I was really concerned that I was going to hurt a child.
Of course.
So yes, I left after 5 years, didn't have a clue what I was going to be doing. Loved advertising sales. I just happened upon independent newspapers, stayed there for 5 years, but was quite frustrated by the corporate environment. Too many rules, too many regulations. And I was offered a sales job with Mum's Mail and ended up buying the magazine. So
that's incredible. That's
where I am now.
That's a fantastic story because I pick a few things from there. You went into teaching, didn't like it that much, decided to go into advertising sales, sort of the beginnings of your entrepreneurial streak coming out. You then joined another company and happened to buy it. What was that experience like?
I actually bought it before I started working there. So we were in negotiations for the sales position, and then I actually just offered to buy the business. So didn't even start before I bought it. So the writing was on the wall. I didn't want to have another boss.
Of course, I imagine so. At what point, that makes me think, I mean, you had experience before, you'd worked for other people, so you knew what it was like to be an employee. And there's something that changes in an entrepreneur at a specific point in their life when they are ready to say, I now want to own my time. What happened?
I think it wasn't so much as owning my time, but just getting tired of being told, no, you can't do it like that. You have to do it a specific way because it's always been done that way. Regardless of the fact whether your ideas were better ideas, in a big corporate, that's not an option. There's a set of rules and you stick to the rules and there's no deviation from it. And that became very frustrating for me. So I really leapt at the opportunity to be able to do my own thing. As terrifying as it was, it's very comfortable knowing at the end of the month exactly what you're earning. Within reason, I was also in a commission job at Independent, but I knew more or less what I was going to be earning every month. And to leave the comfort of that, to own your own business, knowing that you have to pay all your own overheads. I started with no staff. It was literally just me because I didn't know if it would work and if I could afford to employ anybody. So that for me was the most frightening. And now to date, 11 years later, for me the most scary thing about being a business owner is knowing that on the 25th of the month I have to pay all those salaries and pay all those expenses and there's no excuses. It really comes down to you at the end of the day on the 25th.
What did you see in that business that wanted you to buy it? Because I'm listening to your story. There are viewers who are aspiring or existing entrepreneurs, and they're also thinking about their own stories. Maybe a viewer has seen a business somewhere and says, what am I going to do about it?
I think it really has to relate to the time in your life. I had 2 very young children at the time when I first bought the business. My children are now turning 16 and turning 12. And Mum's Mail was starting out as a mini mag for parents. Anything to do with issues parents might have. There's health advice, there's parenting advice, there's party advice, anything and everything to do with stuff that parents might look for. So for me, that was exactly where I was in my own life. I was looking for answers to a whole lot of things. And to provide that resource for parents, it really was a one-stop shop of everything that you could possibly need. So I think had I been offered a business or an opportunity at a motoring company, for example, I wouldn't have wanted to do that. I wasn't passionate about it. The bottom line, when you're looking at a business, you have to be absolutely passionate about it and want to do that, and realize that you're going to be doing that all day, every day, 24/7. If it's not something you love, don't even go there.
Right. And so you decided to buy the business because you had a vested interest in it.
Absolutely.
A passion for it.
Absolutely.
And those are the things. And then obviously the driving force behind that afterwards, because passion can only get you so far, is the hard work.
Absolutely. You do also need to know a little bit about what you're getting into. So with my background as an English teacher and my background in advertising sales, it made perfect sense to buy a magazine that had already been established. So it was a lot easier than starting something from scratch, because the original owner had already established all the distribution channels. She'd spoken to the schools. The magazine had already been arranged to be dropped off at various places. So it was a lot easier. Even though she'd only done 5 issues, it was pretty much getting the recipe, here, go and make it work. In saying that, it was very difficult to start. Not being able to afford full-time staff, I was outsourcing to designers and printers, and a lot of that stuff is still not something that we can do in our own office. We cannot print our magazine in our offices, it's just too huge. But I now have my own full-time designer, I have a full-time bookkeeper, I have sales reps, a sub-editor, a receptionist, and that certainly also helps once you have that infrastructure. When it's just you in the office on your own to start, it's very difficult to keep your chin up when things aren't going 100%.
Yes, I know that feeling all too well, very, very well.
It's very lonely.
When you have people who are reliant on you now for
Absolutely.
their livelihood.
Yes, and I think also just initially that fear of failure, not wanting to let it fail, because I'd left a place that I was really successful, and to now do something that I really knew very little about. I knew nothing about running a business. In fact, I still don't know too much about debit and credit when it comes to the banking and the paying the bills.
This is the thing.
But yeah, just that fear of not wanting to fail really drove me, together with the passion, because I just refused to give up. I'm very stubborn, and I think that's quite a good quality. It can be a bad quality, but being an entrepreneur, you have to not give up easily. That's something you need to do.
You talked about your teaching career as well as the time at independent newspapers, helping to contribute towards running this new business.
Yes.
But particularly the teaching career. What did you find in that contributed to your entrepreneurial journey?
Well, I think a classroom is almost like managing a business in a sense, because you have your pupils, which in a sense are like your staff. And also the English background helped with all the editing skills, obviously, for the magazine. But being a teacher, you have to be a negotiator, you have to be fair. So there are a lot of skills within the classroom that you can adapt to being a business owner. You have to be very diplomatic, which I find quite difficult at times, because I'm very stubborn and very outspoken. So quite often I have to bite my tongue when I'd rather not. And as a teacher, you can't have favorites. You need to treat everybody fairly. And so there are a lot of skills that could be transferred from a teaching background to a magazine owner background.
But that's what I love about the stories we hear on the show from all successful entrepreneurs, and now yourself, is that every background that you've had, or every experience you've had, ultimately will serve your entrepreneurial journey. You will always find something, a lesson you can learn, or a skill that you've had.
Absolutely.
Which is what the entrepreneurial journey is about.
Absolutely.
You're learning on the ground.
Absolutely. No job or experience is ever wasted. I mean, I even think back to the very first job I had as a student. I was waitressing. Even that taught me lessons, that often you have difficult people and you just really have to suck it up. You can't have a tantrum. You just need to smile and wave. So absolutely every experience you have in life can contribute towards that entrepreneurial journey. No time is ever wasted and no lessons ever wasted.
And talking about challenges and how to manage those, what were some of your greatest challenges in building this business? You started in 2004. It's now 11 years later.
Yes.
There must have been times when you thought, what am I doing this for?
Yes, a lot of the time there are a lot of people that come in on your turf as such, and they try to copy what you've done, and they think it's going to be an easy thing to do. And they try and they last a few months and they fall by the wayside. And there's always competition. Competition in business is good. but it does annoy you, and you've got to really try really hard not to let it get to you. There will always be imitators, but as long as you know that what you're doing is the right thing and you just keep steadfast and don't change your formula, it's worked for us for the last 11 years, and I trust that it will carry on working for us.
Competition is always one of the greatest challenges.
And especially for small startup businesses.
It forces you to continually innovate with that particular product or service offering.
And also competing with the bigger publications. There's a lot of regional newspapers, there's a lot of regional magazines, and it's quite difficult. You really are a small fish in that big pond. And to even dare to take them on was quite scary in the beginning.
In addition to the challenges, the flip side is having great achievements because of the amount of work that you've put in. Clearly over the past 11 years, you've created a household name with Mom's Mail.
Yes.
People have come to know and trust the publication as a source of legitimate information, particularly around their kids, because I think mothers and kids, that's the strongest relationship you could ever build in transporting knowledge about the environment around them. What were some of the greatest achievements?
Sure. Well, I'd probably have to say expanding into a different area, because we obviously started with the Durban magazine, which started quite small. It started on 16 pages, and we now do a 96-page resource for parents every month. 96 pages every month just for the Durban area. We do 35,000 magazines, which we distribute ourselves. We don't outsource that. And we also expanded to Johannesburg and Pietermaritzburg. Johannesburg was not a good story. We lasted about 3 years there. We weren't based in Johannesburg, we were based in Durban. Very important lesson learned. If you want your business to succeed, you have to be based in the area. It really didn't work for us. We were hands off with the distribution, and we actually lost a lot of money in the Johannesburg area. So if I can give any advice to entrepreneurs, don't expand if you haven't got the staff on the ground in the area. Maritzburg, we've expanded. It hasn't grown like the Durban magazine's grown. Again, we haven't got the staff on the ground there. But I'd say managing people in different areas is a huge challenge. So I prefer to stay local. It's a lot easier and more manageable.
Tell us about some of your personal achievements, because you've taken awards at various, you've been recognized by the peers in the industry, and I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, that moment in their lives when, yes, they've put in all these hours and suddenly they're being recognized in their own industries. It's a feeling of fulfillment.
It is awesome to be recognized, because often as an entrepreneur, it's a very lonely journey, and you kind of feel like you have to pat yourself on the back all the time. I'd say one of my single most achievements that I'm proudest of was the Umhlanga Woman Achiever of the Year, which I received a few years ago. I've also since served as the chairperson for that organisation, as well as the chairperson for KZN Women in Business. And those organisations' positions also work on a voting-in basis. So it does show that the members have faith in you and have trust in you to put you in that position of leadership. But certainly in terms of the Umhlanga Woman Achiever of the Year, that was one of the most special ones.
Congratulations on that one.
Thank you.
You've been involved in many networking organizations.
Yes.
That I think the primary, mandate of the organization is mentorship. How important would you say is mentorship to an entrepreneur, and do you have a mentor?
I don't strictly have a mentor. I do look up to a lot of fellow businessmen and women, but it's so important when you're starting out to ask for help and to find somebody that you connect with, that you can just bounce ideas off, because it's so difficult to make decisions on your own, especially when there's no staff that you can consult.
That's right.
It's often one-man bands or one-woman bands. So a good piece of advice would be find somebody that you trust, that you look up to, and that also is not necessarily in the same industry that you're in, because you don't want them to feel threatened by sharing their knowledge with you. So if it's not a competitor industry, that's always a good idea to find somebody older as well. And if you're a female entrepreneur, it could be a male or a female mentor, but often a female mentor might be a little bit more compassionate and understanding when you do have a meltdown. So,
that's actually true,
yes.
if you think about it in that way.
And that's how these women's organisations also help with mentorship. Very close-knit bands of women. So to join a networking organisation is highly recommended as well, because you definitely can find a mentor within that safe environment.
As a female entrepreneur, you've built your business, so you're driving this business, you're making the critical decisions in order to grow it, scale it, take it to another level, roll it out to another province, have those experiences. Have those experiences and come back to tell us about them.
Yes.
Be they good or bad. How do you think female entrepreneurs need to position themselves for success, especially in this environment, in South Africa, in our South African economy, and with the resources we have around us, with the kind of trade, networks that we can form, things like that. How do you feel about female entrepreneurs, particularly in South Africa at this time?
I still think that they are struggling to get higher up on the rung. If you have a look at the statistics, male still dominates top positions. That's obviously talking about corporates, but in terms of female entrepreneurs, you're starting your own business, you're climbing up, do your research. Make sure that you know what you're getting yourself into before you try, because there's nothing worse than trying and failing, and then you just give up and you go back to a job.
That's it, I think so. What would you say, now we're talking to all entrepreneurs, because they've heard your story. I mean, you've talked about being in a couple of positions, being an employee full-time, recognizing an opportunity when you saw one, because I think as an entrepreneur, that's what you do, right? You recognize opportunities, you leverage them, and you make them grow or expand them. And then you decided, well, I'm going to do this no matter what, and created a particular niche for yourself in the Durban industry particularly. So what would you say to aspiring entrepreneurs and businessmen or women as final words of advice?
You can't do it on your own. You do need a support structure. I have an incredible husband at home who gave up a fancy corporate job to work with me side by side for 8 years. He's since bought his business this year, bought a business, so that he's doing his own thing now. But he literally was an incredible support in terms of looking after the kids, fetching and carrying them from school, helping with homework, doing the cooking, doing the grocery shopping. You can't do it alone. As much as you might be a single female entrepreneur, you have to have a support. So whether that's a husband or a family, you have to have somebody that's there backing you up, because the hours are very long. And often the reward is not there straight away, and it's very hard when you try month after month and you think, oh, when am I finally going to make some profit? When can I see the light? So if you have somebody encouraging you and telling you you can actually do it, that was very important for me, was my husband believing that I could actually do it, when everyone else said, well, what do you know about running a business? You know, do you actually know what you're doing? You should stay where you are. You don't know anything. So it's really hard to hear that. So find one cheerleader and make sure that that person supports you no matter what. No matter how many times you fall and you make a fool of yourself, make sure you've got somebody cheering you on.
I love that. Find a cheerleader. Yeah. It's so, and give them the pom-poms too.
Yes,
so that
there's
they can
a song,
cheer
but
you
I
on.
won't start singing. I sing really badly.
Before you leave us, Alice,
yes,
what would you say to young kids who are in high school, finishing high school, getting out there? Because I have this my own personal views on whether tertiary education is as critical as it needs to be for you to be able to progress or succeed. We know many successful entrepreneurs didn't complete tertiary education but have gone on to build multi-million-dollar businesses and billion-dollar businesses. What would you say to young kids who are now considering a career path and looking at entrepreneurship as a viable one?
You know, it's so difficult because they don't know at that. I was at university. By my third year of university, I still didn't know what I wanted to do, but I was there because it was the right thing to do, because everyone else said, oh, you need to go to university and study. But certain kids are built for university and certain kids aren't. And I really don't think that you should force yourself into tertiary education if it's not something that you're looking at. So maybe take a gap year off after school. If you want to go and volunteer at a charity, for example, for a year, just while you find yourself. Hopefully it might take more than 1 year, but don't take too long. But the formal tertiary education definitely doesn't suit a lot of personalities, and it's not right to, as a parent, to force your child into that mold if it's not something that they want to do. In saying that, they need to go to as many career fairs and open days as possible to expose themselves to different types of careers that they might possibly want to get involved in. My own daughter had no idea what she wanted to do, and she's since been exposed to food technology, which is quite an interesting option because there's so many different things she can do with food technology besides just being a chef or going into hotel management. So I think don't limit your options. Look at a whole range of things. Speak to people that are in different industries to find out, what does a chef do? What are the hours of a chef? You might want to run straight away when you hear what it's about.
Exactly.
I wanted to be a vet until I heard what you had to do when a cow was giving birth and the calf got stuck. So you need to definitely make sure that you do your homework. Speak to lots of people in those industries. And no, university or tertiary education is not always the right place for everybody to go.
That's fantastic advice. And I also think, to add to your point, is that especially in a country like ours, where sometimes kids won't always have that authoritative voice or that guiding voice to be able to say, well, let's do this, let's focus on that. And I think their more need for entrepreneurship comes out of the need for innovation to address some of our key challenges that we're facing across the board, across the different social categories and the types of economic households that we have, the incomes that every household has. So I think that's a fantastic point you raised. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having me
on Biz Today, and I hope we can get you back in the future to tell us about further plans that you have and where Mum's Mail has taken you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the invite.
Excellent. So that was Alice Leah, our editor at Mum's Mail, which is one of the most recognizable, I think, publications in the Durban industry for mothers and kids. If you're ever in Durban, and if you're in Pietermaritzburg, because I know that the publication is there too, take a look at it and learn from our entrepreneurs' stories and journeys. They have a lot of, there's been a lot of blood, sweat and tears, as they say. There are times when you want to give up, but don't. I always say this to you, don't. If you have a burning desire to build something greater, then go out and do it. When we come up next, we will be talking to Mohammed Chauhan of Startup Grind. He'll be talking to us about what this initiative means for Durban and around the country. Stay tuned.